We've got one presentation left in our lamb rearing session, and that will be delivered by April Bliss, who has just started her Masters at Massey in collaboration with Ag Research. So she will be talking mainly about what she's planning to do.
Thanks, Linda. So I've just started my Masters project, and it's a little bit different to what everyone else has been talking about. It's actually about ewes and not lambs. But Sue, along with Sam Peterson and Caroline, whose presentation Sue did, they're my supervisors. So the project that I am doing is part of a bigger trial at Spring Sheep Dairy in Taupo with Ag Research that's looking into different feeding systems, which Thomas will be talking to you about tomorrow at 10:15. The New Zealand dairy sheep industry is rapidly expanding, as we all know, and more sheep dairy farms are emerging. Farmers are bringing in new dairy sheep genetics into their flocks in an attempt to increase their milk yield, but the problem with this is that the new genetics are not necessarily well adapted to the New Zealand pastoral farming system, so the sheep may not be performing to the standard that the farmers expect them to. So my project is going to be looking at to gain some insight to try and minimise this problem through different housing systems, understanding how housing systems may support high-producing, healthy flocks. It includes 2 studies of 2 different groups of sheep each, with about 550 sheep in each mob, with differing management systems. The first study is on elite sheep with a high proportion of dairy genetics, and these are the genetics that are poorly adapted to the New Zealand environment. One of these mobs is housed 100% indoors, with being fed a total mixed ration diet, and the other is housed indoors during the day on TMR and grazed outside on lucerne overnight. The second study is on non-elite sheep that have a lower proportion of dairy genetics, and they're housed indoors during the day on TMR and grazed outside on pasture overnight, and a mob who spends 100% of their time outside grazing pasture. The hypothesis for the elite trial is that these sheep can be either partially or fully housed indoors without affecting their potential milk production. And the hypothesis for the non-elite trial is that the increased heat exposure and activity in sheep spending all of their time outside does have an adverse effect on their milk production. So the data that we have collected is seen in this list. Each of the groups have had GPS collars that are seen in that picture, and they had accelerometers called hobos that are kind of like pedometers on their ankles, attached to random sheep throughout each mob that have been monitoring their standing and lying behaviour and their walking distances for a period of about 3 weeks, and that will give us an indication of the difference in activity levels between each group. There were humidity devices and weather stations monitoring the climatic environment the sheep were in. The milk yield and basic composition details like protein and fat content of the milk from each ewe have been taken from the inline milk meters during milking. The sheep's body condition scores and life weights were taken at a few points throughout the trial. And finally, health data that was collected by Caroline and myself, actually watching the sheep during milking and noting down any issues such as lameness, stags, dermatitis and eye problems. These all combined will help us in understanding what impact each of the different management systems has on dairy ewe health and production. And since health and production can also be used as a measure of welfare, this will also shed some light on the welfare of intensively managed ewes in general. And once we see whether the hypotheses are supported or rejected by the results, we can then develop the best management strategies for flocks of different genetic backgrounds, optimising the performance and welfare of dairy ewes throughout the country. So thank you to everyone involved and the staff at Spring Sheep that put up with all my annoying questions and my supervisors that will undoubtedly be having a lot more questions from me soon.